Witness the rise of the Gold Goblin, Norman Osborn's brand new heroic moniker. Will Norman be able to wipe away his old villainous slate? Will he be good as gold, or is he still green with evil? Well, let's hop into issue number 1 from Christopher Cantwell and find out together, shall we? So then, as we join the book, Norman is doing the whole grandpa thing today, looking after his grandson, Normie. And I mean, hey, he does need a male role model in his life, considering his father, Harry, is dead. Well, dead again, but that's a much longer story. In Norman's internal monologue, he talks about how much he really enjoys the distraction of getting to be a grandfather because, well, ever since the Sin Eater took away all of his sins at the end of the Spencer run, he's kind of been lost and adrift, desperately trying to figure out who the hell he actually is anymore. At first, it was like a weight was lifted off him. A lot of people out there would kill for that kind of instant absolution, but once the sins were gone from Norman, he couldn't help but shake the feeling that he had this deep, unknowable emptiness inside him. His villainy had defined him for so very long, and then one day, poof, out of the blue, it was all just gone. It was also around this time, too, Norman started feeling things that he never felt before: guilt, shame, and even a little bit of self-pity. And I mean, really, why not? You could fill hundreds of volumes with all of the different crimes and evil deeds of the Green Goblin, and I mean, hey, they have. In fact, we get a fun little splash page going over the Green Goblin's greatest hits, be it the murder of Gwen Stacy, the endless torture of Peter Parker as Spider-Man, being a terrible father to Harry and leading to his own untimely death. Hell, they even remember that time in Marvel Knights when Norman kidnapped Aunt May and kept her alive in a coffin for a bunch of time. Still though, despite all of this, Norman continues to try and do what he knows best, and that is work. He's rebuilding his company right now, and he's even helping Spider-Man. In fact, at the end of the last Zeb Wells story, Norman had donned a brand new costume and helped Spider-Man defeat Roderick Kingsley, the Hobgoblin, which Norman was more than happy to do because beating up on the Hobgoblin kind of felt like beating up on himself after a while. Now here's the thing though, even though at the end of that story Norman managed to keep both himself and Peter out of the cops' crosshairs by threatening them with his army of lawyers, it seems that the newspaper actually picked up the story and is running with it. All over New York now, people are talking about Norman Osborn, the brand new Gold Goblin. Which is pretty bad for Norman. All throughout the main Spider-Man book, Peter and we as the reader have seen that Norman's change to the good side has always been built on somewhat shaky ground. He's like that alcoholic who keeps fearing the next time he might take a drink. And having people call him Goblin again isn't exactly good for his psyche. In fact, he assumes that Peter's probably gonna dump him and run off after this latest change. But surprisingly though, Peter stays on good Norman's side, saying that they live strange and interesting lives as super people, and even though Norman has betrayed him hundreds of times before, he truly does believe him when he says that he's trying to make amends for past sins and trying to do something good with his life right now at least. And you know, when you got Parker luck, good stuff doesn't happen to you all the time, so you have to take those opportunities when they're presented to you. Here's the interesting thing though, while Peter is on Norman's side and thinks that he is serious about doing good, it would seem that Norman is every bit his own harshest critic. He has horrifying visions of Harry and the Goblin taunting him, which, you know, doesn't paint a great picture of his mental sanity, especially considering that this character has a long and storied history with madness. But I will take my hat off to Cantwell because this stuff is probably the most interesting part of the story. I know a lot of fans were saying, geez, how could we ever possibly ever forgive someone who's done as many bad things with Norman? It's only a matter of time before he turns into the Green Goblin again, right? What's even the point of getting invested in him as a good guy? Well, that's the thing. Norman is asking those very same questions of himself. It's eating him away, it's tearing himself apart, and things get really bad when he ends up seeing the ghost of Gwen Stacy haunting him. She understandably has the harshest words at all for Norman and really cause him to break down. What, so I'm just a lost cause, huh? I just shouldn't even try? Fine then, I won't even put the costume on again. I'll be done with gliders and goblins forever. Well, there's a promise that doesn't last long. As Norman ends up checking on his suit, he sees that someone has actually broken into his house and written a series of names to screw with him. All people that he's hurt or otherwise killed. Peter Parker is on the list several times over. And they even put the baby on the list. Really, the baby? Marvel never likes to remind people that that was a thing that happened and never got retconned. Geez, were the editors asleep at the wheel on this one, or does Cantwell actually have plans for that. We also discover on top of running his company and thinking about being a superhero, Norman has also been keeping tabs on other goblin-like characters, including the newest jack-o'-lantern. It would seem that this guy's been running a really macabre con recently wherein he steals valuable skeletons and sells them to medical schools and private collectors for cash. Norman tries to set up a sting operation for this guy, but when it's made abundantly clear that the private security firm and the cops can't handle it, it looks like this just might be a job for the Gold Goblin. How exactly does Norman carry himself as a superhero? Well, admittedly, much like how he carried himself as a supervillain, he demeans and dresses down the new jack-o'-lantern, saying he's basically a Xerox of a Xerox. A rank amateur loser who couldn't even polish his pumpkin bombs. And speaking of pumpkin bombs, those end up being exactly the thing that take this new jack-o'-lantern down. You see, much like so many other derivatives of the Green Goblin, they've basically all just been using and trading the same Osborn tech back and forth, meaning that Norman can very easily shut it down with his new generation of nanomachines. You know what they say, every time a new jack-o'-lantern gets beaten up, an angel gets its wings. Norman wins the day, and for a split second there, much like at the end of that Hobgoblin fight in Spider-Man, you're unsure of exactly what he's going to do next. However, when a bunch of kids end up asking for his autograph, even Norman himself ends up getting thrown for a hell of a loop as the comic comes to a close. And so that was Gold Goblin issue number 1, everybody, and overall I think it's pretty much exactly what I wanted from a Christopher Cantwell Norman Osborn story. For those not paying attention, Cantwell has basically carved out a nice little niche for himself in the Marvel Universe, writing stories about rich, super intelligent, egomaniacal dickheads, be it Namor, be it Iron Man, be it Doctor Doom. And wouldn't you know it, he just happens to make that magic work again here for Norman Osborn. I will say the book is actually playing with some pretty complex themes and ideas. When, if ever, does a person truly deserve forgiveness? Can a person truly wipe their slate clean of such heinous crimes as the Green Goblin? Are some people just lost causes, and should we not waste the energy in trying to reform them? This book will also be crossing over as part of the big Dark Web event very soon, which means I think it's only a matter of time before Norman comes face to face with the Queen Goblin again, the repository for all of his old sins. And won't that story be kind of interesting on its face, because it's going to feature a good Norman Osborn versus an evil Ben Reilly? How about that? Overall, I'd give this one a pretty positive 8 out of 10. The art is good. If you've enjoyed Cantwell's other work, I think you're going to enjoy this one too, and even though I am certain that good guy Norman isn't going to be a permanent status quo, they're certainly trying to wring all the story potential out of it in this one, and I appreciate that for what it's worth.
Hey there everyone, Kate Joel again, and I just want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It means a lot to me. And hey, if you enjoyed the book I covered in this issue and want some comics of your own, might I recommend Book Depository? It's my #1 place for shopping for comic book trades. You get a great price, and if you use my link down in the description, you'll actually be helping me out at the same time. You get something, I get something, everybody wins, right? So until next time everyone, I've been Joel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.